So, I'm sitting here editing our most recent version of our podcast, the Exchanges podcast, and I just got done. I look over on my laptop screen and I see on my RSS feed something pop up about Hobson's new music video, Happy Ending. So, of course, I watch it. And man, I'm not sure what even to think, man. Talk about inflammatory and hyper-racist. Ouch. So I watched the music video, and after I get done, I go over to my man Anthony Fantano's page. He's an independent online YouTube music reviewer. You guys have probably heard of him. He is one of my favorite critics. And, of course, he definitely had a critique or a small opinion on this new Hobson music video. A lot of the stuff that he says, I pretty much agree. He brought up this point of, what if there was a country or singer, right? And he created a music video about going to, I don't know, a black neighborhood in Atlanta and trying to find himself a black woman to go ahead and have sex with on the low for money. How outraged would the black community be about that? They'd probably be very outraged. I imagine that there will be a shitstorm in the media for that country singer. And even if that country singer did everything as in tongue-in-cheek, the way Hobson did for his new Happy Ending music video. For you guys to know what I'm talking about, you obviously have to go ahead and watch the music video. It's him taking Asian stereotypes to the nth degree and talking about going to a massage parlor, an Asian massage parlor, and getting a quote-unquote happy ending. And the stereotypes are everywhere. Everywhere. So like I said, imagine if a country white singer would have did something similar. How would we feel? Would we be offended? Would that singer be blackballed? Should the same thing happen to Hobson, considering some of the obviously not serious but still stereotypical representations of Asian women? So I don't know. I feel like we're at a place in public society where there's a very low tolerance for this type of stuff, for these type of stereotypes out there. Maybe in a previous generation, in a previous time period, you can get away with stuff like this. But in today's world, how divisive and toxic it is, things like this can go ahead and end your career. Or it can go ahead and make your career too, right? There's all types of no-name people who became famous because of their trolling and maybe their stereotypes and whatnot. So I don't know, man. Let's go ahead and get down to brass tacks here. Welcome to another edition of the Exchanges podcast. We have another great one here for you. Actually, I have to give a lot of credit to all of the people I sat down with to have this conversation. To Lawrence, Kwaku, and David, because you guys did the heavy lifting for this episode. I came into it kind of my brain in mush. I was a bit overworked. I just been going at it, doing these podcasts, working, and doing a whole bunch of other projects. And I was kind of driving in this conversation low on gas, I felt like maybe I needed to take my omega-3s or something. So after I was done recording this conversation, I was a bit hesitant on how it would come out, at least how I would sound. But I must say that this one is another awesome podcast session, all thanks to a lot of the intellectual lifting of Kwaku, Lawrence, and David. We fly pretty far in this conversation. We start out pretty grounded. We talk about the tragic Las Vegas shootings. And then after that, we shoot to the stars. We get into some very deep philosophical and hypothetical talk about artificial intelligence. And what does it mean today? and what will it mean in the future, and what does it mean to be human and relating to AI and technology. After that, we go ahead and get into the Republican tax plan. So we get backgrounded. And just when you think the episode is over, no, we got more. We actually stayed and started talking about conspiracy videos. We talked about Clinton Cash for a moment. We went ahead and got into Bernie Sanders, Elisabeth Warren. Oh, man, we ended up talking about the gerrymandering case that's going before the Supreme Court and what may happen in that. We talk about Facebook trolling, and none of that stuff we talked about in order I just presented. We just kind of went into a freewheeling conversation. It's actually pretty damn good. And that's what I love about this podcast. We go ahead and get together with ordinary people from their walks of life and gets their opinions on all types of things that are happening in our society today. And each one is just getting better and better. Also, I'm getting really handy here with the audio production equipment here. So it's taking me a little bit less time to put these together. I went ahead and slammed out 3 of them in the past couple weeks. That's what I'm talking about. I'm a little bit proud of myself. Anyway, please go on YouTube and like and subscribe our channel there. Your support means so much to us. I hope to look back at these early podcasts and reminisce about, man, remember when we had like 2 subscribers and maybe 3 views? Now look at us. We're doing 1 billion. I doubt it'll get that big. You know, I'm all open for a larger audience connecting with our podcast here and maybe bringing some of you people on. Who knows? I want to go ahead and grab the opinions of everyday folks out there. I want to bring their life story to our podcast. So, lastly, of course, I'm going to go ahead and say it again because it's coming. It's probably coming actually after this episode. We're going to go ahead and upload this stuff to iTunes and to the Google Play Store, and we will have a web place for you to go ahead and listen to our podcast outside of YouTube. So in the future, you'll be able to go ahead and just download our app, subscribe to our show. And listen to all of these podcasts at your leisure. If you're driving in a car, you're at work, whatever you're doing out there, cooking some food, you can go ahead and get some great conversation from us. I think that's all I got right now. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into it. See you guys on the flip side. Adios. It's definitely a thing. A part-time job I have is I write for this online music website called Rise FM, and so I try to do like cultural pieces and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I did this kind of a research article on the Masquerade and how it got shut down, and then it got moved to where the Coca-Cola Underground is at right now, and everything, and all the reasons behind that. These land developers over there, man, they want that entire property surrounding, of course, the Beltline that they've been trying to build for the past 15 years or however long it's been in business there. And, they finally pushed them out. Well, actually, I wouldn't say pushed out because the original owners, they sold it to another individual. Then that individual, I forget his name now, but he had a ton of drug issues and stuff going on. He, a really popular nightlife guy down in Atlanta. Anybody who goes out to the Masquerade, y'all know who I'm talking about because it was all over the news. And but he had like a drug overdose and he died. But before he died, he ended up selling that property, that building, to these land developer people. And they finally forced the people at the Masquerade to go ahead and leave. The owners of the Masquerade tried to go ahead and purchase this other bigger venue that was a little bit north. I want to say, what's the name of but anyway, somewhere north around that area, the Masquerade went ahead and bought this huge warehouse area, and they were going to go. I don't know if you guys ever been to the Masquerade before, but there's 3 different parts. Yeah, it's pretty much an event venue, club venue. They have all different types of acts come through. Really famous. It's been around for forever. Like the Warped Tour was started at the Masquerade.
Yeah, I know the Warped Tour.
Earlier,
I remember it a lot back in the days, but haven't heard anything recently about it. So.
But I mean, anyway, they bought this huge building. They were going to make the heaven and the hell sections and the limbo in between in there.
Purgatory.
But Purgatory. There was this other developer who was in the area who was trying to. They just got done building a subdivision.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're trying to sell these houses. We're not trying to have the Masquerade right down the street.
Right.
So they tied the Masquerade people up into court. So the Masquerade couldn't fight these guys, big money behind them. So they finally opted to go ahead and just move it down to the Coca-Cola Center.
Sure.
And that's that. Anyway, yeah, I guess we should go ahead and get into it. We're at Dave's house, a secret location, because our other venue has been by some people. I swear they're doing fantasy football. Any of you guys do fantasy football?
I do not.
I do, but
yeah?
I'm not into it. I'm usually the guy that gets chosen because they need 8 people.
Oh yeah, like
right in.
Fill out a card.
Yeah.
I'm not into it. I mean, at my job, they try to get me, come and do some fantasy football, man. I'm like, no, I don't pay attention. I've never been really that big of a sports guy. It's been, it's whatever. But nope. I mean, I'm into other. I call fantasy football like Dungeons and Dragons for jock-minded folks. But
sure.
But I like Dungeons and Dragons. I play the game, so
Me too.
It's whatever. It's fun. I go to another meetup group for that actually.
I play online with the group. So.
Oh, Roll20?
Yeah, Roll20. I play Pathfinder every 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah. Pathfinder is the game ever since 4th edition.
Absolutely.
But I skipped and completely over 4th edition. Couldn't stand it. Too much like a video game. Too much like WoW or World of Warcraft. Okay. And but 5th edition is where it's at.
I've heard it's good.
You should try it. But so who we got here? I'm Brent, obviously. Kwaku.
I'm Kwaku.
Lawrence.
And I'm Dave.
Dave. All right. Lawrence, we have a new guy. Thank you for coming out, man.
You're welcome.
You ready to talk about some interesting topics? You ready
Let's
to go
see.
ahead and we'll see. We'll see what the table brings out of
each other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, his roommate is actually at the women's night as well. So
okay.
with Andy
cool.
tonight. So
Cool. Okay. Cool.
We got several topics here. The shootings in Las Vegas. I mean, that was a big thing, over the past couple weeks. The world always brings some type of event, which is tragic. I actually have, some things I want to go ahead and talk about with that. But then we have artificial intelligence, and I definitely some things I want to discuss with that. I want to go into a concept because we talked about this a long time ago, and we brought up an interesting proposition that I want to go ahead and bring to the table. But we'll go ahead and get to that. Then lastly, keeping kind of with current events. I don't know how much you guys are interested in the whole death and taxes or the Republican tax plan and stuff. But if you want to guys go ahead and shoot the shit and talk about that, we can talk about that too.
Sure.
So first, it's only 4 of us here, so we can go ahead and get into each of our guys' ideas of any of these topics. But let's start with the Las Vegas shooting since it's the biggest thing. Kwaku, man, what do you think?
Obviously it's terrible. But I don't know if it's weird, but I haven't actually read a lot about it. I've just gotten so used to stuff like this happening. It's just become like the new normal for me, which, don't get me wrong, it wasn't just I was like, I was shocked, but then honestly, I read things here and there, but it's been mostly just kind of move on with things. For me, I've become really very much desensitized to this, which is crazy because I remember when Columbine happened and I was just, I never forgot that, but now it happened so much. I think they're like 1,500 or something, like since then, something crazy like that, mass shootings. Just in this country. So, that's where I am. I was shocked, but it was like being punched in the face, for the 100th time. Eventually, it's like, it hurts.
I mean, you definitely feel like a level of just being desensitized to all types of violence. Well, I mean, do you think that the media is really what's driving that? It's just you hear so much about it. Like, these shootings are constantly in your face.
Okay, so...
But just the violent, do you ever feel like, I should be affected by this stuff?
And it's not something I constantly feel. It's something that will dawn on me from time to time. Like, I'll be at work at my desk and it'll cross my mind like, shit, 58 or 59. I don't say it's 58 people got killed. I should really,
care
I
more.
would say, and I don't want to use the term care because, it might have a I don't care, but I should be more shocked. but then I just carry on with my day because I become so desensitized. The media does play a big part in it. And I feel like since Donald Trump got elected, it's ratcheted up. It's almost like it's shown them a new way to be profitable. So, obviously now they have shows about, is it Paddock, Stephen Paddock, the shooter's life, like this and that.
Oh, wow.
And they've turned that into
what
reality shows.
Oh, not like a show, like his own show, but shows like talking
all
about
the information.
It's almost like, I hate to say it, but I can almost imagine like, what's his name? Is it Jeff Zucker? Like, let's say, for instance, the head of CNN, like, when this happened, he was like, yes! Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I could literally imagine that.
Like, it's chopped to get
like, yes,
money today.
Yeah, exactly.
Make
like,
some money.
We're all going to eat for weeks. So, that also, because I try and stay away from that, just because it's so Hollywood. It's so, like, just,
I feel like MTV can come out with a series where they show like a disturbed 13 or 14-year-old and it's called like His Shooter Life, where you get to see him like, meander around his room and feel like an outcast. Eventually watch him go out and buy a bunch of weapons. The camera crew there and everything, there's no even stop him. And then him proceed to go ahead and do something really violent with those weapons. And them take that show, put it on TV, and market it for money. That's how, I think commercialized and desensitized the public has gotten to this stuff, that the concept itself can be marketed, like, you're saying, with how the media does it.
Along the lines of what he said, I mean, we had, over the last year, 400 mass shootings. That's more than there are actually days of the year.
Yeah.
Which means that there are days that people are doubling down or whatnot. And you talk about this person, this recluse sitting in his house. How about we talk about this guy? We're talking about a 65-year-old man, divorced but has a very nice girlfriend, multimillionaire, gambles, but otherwise doesn't have to work in life. And that's not going to be the MTV show. This guy does not meet any of the standards that you would want to find in a mass shooter. And they still have no clue. He didn't leave a message. He didn't have any vendettas. He just sent his girlfriend off and gave her $100,000, bought 47 guns, and went shooting.
It's not. I mean, Lawrence, what do you got to say, man?
Just following up Dave saying that it doesn't fit the typical profile people would think about. Mass shooter, someone who's not like aloof or quiet or some kind of teenager, but he seems wealthy. He's not poor, and just some people like the people at Fox News. It seems they're not. Usually, it's someone who's of other have a different. I hate to say it. Sometimes it seems like I have a different skin tone. They'll probably easily.
If they're black.
Well, even brown.
Yeah. That's true.
Black, brown. They'll immediately jump on it.
So ironically, that's actually a false fact. Now, what is true that if you're Muslim, that you actually have to kill 7 less people in order to get news coverage than you do if you are a Christian white person. But it's also true that in order to get the framing as a black man, you have to kill 3 more people, because the media is very sensitive about racial issues, and they don't want to make mass shootings. You would actually have to kill 3 more people than I would to actually make the news, because they tried to shut down this thing that we've actually gotten with the community to the level where the news should be, and that is we're trying to be a little more racially sensitive, but now they're trying to overcompensate. They don't want to be perceived as somebody that comes against black people. But that same thing has not been applied to Hispanics. That thing has certainly not been applied to Muslims, where a Muslim shooting will get 4 times more media coverage than a Christian shooting. So
before I came here, I went ahead and I went on this great website. It's called like Gun Violence Watch or something. It came out over the past 3 or 4 years, where they're starting to actually take all the news and kind of crunch these statistics and pump out data on gun violence in the United States of America. And I was going down the list of all the instances this year, 2017, of gun violence. And of course, the first one starting with the 58, murder count, Las Vegas, the 60-year-old guy. The one immediately following that was 9-person shooting. That led me to think of like, well, what's considered a mass shooting?
That's true,
So,
right? That's what I was thinking.
The media apparently has been going on the definition of a mass shooting being the killing of at least 3 or 4 people. The FBI says that it's considered a mass shooting if it's done in a public place, 3 to 4 people, and it's indiscriminate killing. So the FBI doesn't categorize like an individual, killing their entire family,
right,
as a mass shooting, which is pretty weird.
I think that's more homicide.
But it's still like
either way, they're homicide.
Yeah, I mean, they're both homicides, but it's like the distinction here is I guess the space.
I would say I agree with it, but maybe get it because even back to what you were saying, I feel like it's narratives. It's all built on narratives. So, for instance, when we think of a mass shooter, we all now have been trained to think of certain things like public place, gun. Well, of course, mass shooter, but something like that. So I feel like it's just something that maybe will fall into that narrative. As soon as it ticks off these boxes, then, it's a mass shooting, let's run with this story for 3 weeks or, anything like that.
Now, the media doesn't seem to go by the whole indiscriminate killing clause where the people you shoot have to just be random people and not people you're associated with or your family. The media just seems to classify it as 3 to 4 people being shot generally in a short time span. When we hear these statistics of, 17K people, being killed in mass shootings and stuff, that's a lot of instances. But I often think that the average person, when they think of mass shooting, they think of what we saw in Las Vegas.
So that hasn't happened in modern society in the United States. So, I mean, we had killings of that, but they were racial in instance back in the 30s. So since then, we haven't really had like 50 people dying. And 57 is the highest that has been deemed from an outside source like that in any modern times.
The next one being Orlando. That was the next biggest one I saw. And
it was almost a year to the day, I want to say.
Yeah, it was very close to each other. It was like, who's keeping a schedule out there?
I know, right?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then the one before that was the Virginia Tech shootings.
Yeah,
which
massive.
Yeah, I mean, the news goes so fast, we almost forget about that. Like, I looked it up. That was back in 2012, man.
Oh, 2012.
Yeah.
Wait, no, it was before that.
No,
2012?
I'm pretty sure it's 2012.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Look it up later.
Yeah,
but I'm pretty sure it's 2000. I want to say it's 2012 that happened. Oh, no. Wait a minute, you're right. It was earlier because George Bush was still president.
George
It was
Bush
earlier because one guy who wrote a rap song that claimed that he was going to follow it up with another mass shooting in the rap song, and ended up serving 8 years for writing a rap song.
Okay.
Was just got out of jail.
It was
I heard the interview with him. So.
Okay.
It was 2008, 2007, around there. That's when that happened. Because the stuff I was reading was saying that George W. Bush actually went ahead and signed some type of policy or law regarding background checks. So that was the Virginia Tech. And then the last one before that was all the way back in 1991. And it was near Fort Hood.
What about
Texas?
Was that 97?
We're talking about kill count.
Oh, I see.
So that's the way these are, like, the numbers here. So yeah, I mean, that's further down the list, but these are like the top ones. And the one that happened back in 91 was it was near Fort Hood, a place called like the Libby Massacre, where this guy in a pickup truck drove his truck into a restaurant intentionally, and then hopped out and with 2 handguns began just shooting people indiscriminately.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, when I was looking up this stuff, I was like, what's the common thread in all these, besides guns being easily accessible? Because, I mean, that's a part of this. But I do think that often what's lost in the discussion is that there's some other elements that have to be going on, for the frequency of these events happening and the scale. I don't think people are wrong when they say that this is a mental health issue.
You know what? I don't know if that's the case. I was going to actually say that. That was the one thing I thought about this. And, people are like, it's too easy for people with mental illnesses to get guns and things. I'm like, well, first things first, it's kind of I mean, if you kill a bunch of people, I feel like you're kind of ill by definition, right?
Yeah, right.
No sane person wakes up like, hey, I'm going to go and kill 50 people. Statistics really show that people with mental illnesses actually don't commit any more crime or any more violent crime than people that don't. Yeah. In fact, they're usually victims, more so.
And for the record, the guy that did this shooting, I mean, they said there's no mental illness test you could have put out that would have gotten that guy. No criminal record whatsoever.
Exactly.
No, I mean, he had a father who had done some bad stuff, but we're not going to penalize people for having a father that has bad stuff. Like, he had a clean slate, no mental illness, was considered a really nice guy.
Yeah, the Vox video also showed that it's over exaggerated the mental.
I always thought that
over exaggerate. I don't know, man.
It's again, all the statistics I've seen, it actually shows the opposite. People who are mentally ill are victims of crimes disproportionately than people who aren't. But then again, I would say if you're going to kill 50 people, obviously you're not right. Yeah. But where's the test for? Is this person going to kill? You know, it's like like you said, there's not really necessarily a test if someone has a normal life for 60 years, if you will. Well, at least in large part, and then one day just wakes up and decides he's going to kill a bunch of people.
When I was looking at the most recent mass shootings, before Las Vegas, there was an incident that happened in Texas. There was an NFL party. An individual that these people knew came into the party with a handgun and shot and killed 9 of them. Then he barred himself in the bathroom, tried to argue with the police. Police ended up shooting him, but he ended up shooting himself and killing himself. When you go back and look into a bit more of the details, you find out that the shooter was going through a divorce with his wife. They were married for 2 years. He had this job at Texas Instruments. It was a pretty good job. Then he lost that job. So then his wife ended up kind of picking up the slack for the household and stuff that they had. Eventually, reports say that she saw him not kind of picking up weight and financially and helping the household, so she got a divorce. And the night of the shooting, this individual who was going through a divorce, this guy was seen at a bar drinking. So we have alcohol involved, and we have a guy who was going through a very troubled domestic period in his life. And you mix the two, he ends up going home, goes back to his wife and ends up killing her and, several of their friends. So then there's an incident before that, right? This one happened in Mississippi a couple months back. He was at a cookout with a bunch of family members. By all reports and all accounts, the family members who survived this shooting said that this individual was mentally disturbed. He was a bully. He was always mean and always violent to begin with. Something set him off at this cookout where he was arguing with a family member. He whipped out a gun from behind and shot him, then shot a few other people at the cookout, hopped in his car, drove back to his his ex-wife's place, killed her, killed her new boyfriend, then drove somewhere else, killed 2 more people that this guy knew, and then before he was apprehended by the police and actually arrested him. You look into the details of this guy. This guy's mother shot and killed his father. And the reasons behind that was that there was a lot of domestic violence where the father was, beating up the mother. She tried to take him to court. The court wouldn't do anything about it. She ended up acquiring a pistol somehow and shooting this guy's father.
So you've listed 2 incidents, both of which you're claiming mental instability. One, because he had a bad lot in life, which would be saying that all people who are, suffering from depression have a major mental illness. And the other of which sounds like this older guy. It's like, do you having bad parents mean that you're now considered mentally unstable? Or are you saying that it's genetic mental instability?
No, I'm not saying that at all. There's a few more incidents out there. I'm not going to go through them all, but they all distinctly link back to domestic issues and childhood issues. And I'm not saying that everybody who has a mental illness has a breaking point where they'll go ahead and do something like this. But there is a common denominator of domestic violence and possible childhood issues that these people grow up, end up losing something maybe feeling ostracized in some way, and then committing violence. And that's a key trait there that when I was looking through the stuff I saw over and over and over again, is that there's just an element of like some dysfunction in the household that carried on into adult life, and a feeling of alienation, isolation, and then these people just pop. So if I'm able to see that, somebody who's definitely a lot more qualified than me out there can go ahead and see this issue.
So I'm able to say that. You've described two instances, one of which he had, bad things happen, like people lose their jobs, people get divorced. The other of which, yes, he was around violence and all that, but are we literally going to declare, like, were either of these people have a history in mental hospitals beyond just, one's depressed right now because life sucks, and one had a bad mom? There's just not that link where you can call these people mentally ill, and that's where the slippery slope of saying that. Go ahead, Lawrence.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say the slippery slope of declaring people mentally ill and saying, therefore, you lose any rights in life.
I think it's not you cannot simply attribute to one source. I think it's more like, imagine a balloon that you just pumping air and air, it just slowly, because in day-to-day life you just see normal, but there are things just keep adding until to a breaking point, as you say, it explodes.
There's a lot of intersecting issues that, when eventually the stars align with those issues and it affects a person and they can go ahead and go postal. I agree that, that's not necessarily, a definitive sign of like, a mental illness per se. I do think that these issues affect people's mental state. And there's enough cases out there to where we see this happening and over again in a repeated fashion, to where at the very least we can say that there's something going on in society maybe that maybe triggers some of this stuff. The breakdown of family units, and maybe it's the breakdown of community, where these people who feel ostracized and stuff and maybe alienated don't have anywhere to go. There's not enough therapists out there that are accessible or maybe affordable to reach these people, or there's not a sense of community anymore to go ahead and talk with these individuals to maybe alleviate some of this pressure. Then it gets misdirected in another way, and before you know it, you have 50, 60 people dead.
So let's pretend there were all the psychologists in the world available. You know what all of these mass shootings have in common? 100% of them are done by men.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know our gender very well, but we don't tend to ask for help when we need it. And you could make an argument that that's society's problem. But for me, for example, I could have all the problems in the world and all the stuff. I'm probably, unfortunately, going to internalize it because that's what I've been taught by society to do. Yeah, and that's what every man's going to do. We're told from day one, man up. That's literally a phrase where we're told that we need to suck things up.
That's quite harmful.
That's a problem.
That's right.
That's a good point. That is true. There isn't enough attention paid to mental health issues and issues that just men deal with in Western society in general. It leads to toxic outbursts and stuff and things like this. So every time I hear in the news, man, like, we need more laws. We need more laws. We need more, restrictions on guns. That's what we need. I'm like, true, that would go ahead and help, deter some of the issue. But there's still this other glaring thing out there that we're not dealing with. We're not, fostering a society where we're changing this narrative that men hear growing up and be conditioned by in order to not reach out for their issues.
On top of that, there's when we reach a certain age, loneliness becomes a big part of it. If I find myself finding it gets really hard to make. I guess maybe there are ways, but I haven't found a convenient way to make friends. As a lot of my friends are spread out throughout different places. They come and go, and you just kind of not paying attention. They're just gone.
I think that there's something fundamental about Western United States brand of capitalism and democracy and how that permeates through our culture that maybe leads to these type of incidences in their worst form, where somebody, you know, decides that, you know, they're going to go ahead and march through a college campus, like in, you know, Virginia Tech, and just, you know, kill people.
We are the single most me-centric country in existence, meaning we all have, you know, these big dreams and these big resolutions. Being told from day one, you know, you can do anything, you can be anything in society, and then adulthood not matching that representation. And a lot of people combine that with what we just talked about, like people internalizing, so they don't feel, either because, like Lawrence said, like people get involved or, you know, get married and then they stay within their little unit and don't reach out. A lot of people feel this entrapped and they're like, hey, what's going on? They can't talk to anybody. They're like, well, society's not going to give me what I want. I'm taking out society.
Yeah.
And that may be a very big cause here, in addition to easy access to weapons capable of doing that.
Because with all that being said, you could still say, or at least I would think, men are less violent now generally than ever in history of time. So then why does it seem like this is happening more as far as mass shootings?
Well, violence is all at an all-time low, right? You know, in society. I mean, it's one of the safest times to be a human, especially in the United States of America. Right. The odds of you going ahead and walking down the street and getting popped, or, you know, being kidnapped by your government or being blown up or something like that is super small.
That's my main problem with news, by the way. Which, if we go back to, that's like my main problem.
Well, what's your main problem?
It's completely it misrepresents life, like the way things are. You know, we focus on things like, let's say, murders and mass shootings, when really, if you die, it's probably in a car accident or because you ate too many cheeseburgers in your life. And you know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at the stats, the amount of people that die from, like, for instance, heart disease is exponentially higher than, like, anything. But, you know, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, like, this was probably a couple years ago. Like, my girlfriend was going to go to the park. It was getting pretty late, and I was like, you know, what are you doing going to the park by yourself? And she was like, well, you know, I have more chance of getting hit by a car and dying in a car accident than anything happening to me at that park.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that's like my main problem with news. Like, if you follow news, you think you're going to walk outside and, like, someone's just going to stab you, or, you know, it's just like, no. It's not like
you think,
that.
the end of the world is happening. You watch too much news, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a story. They want something, you know, if news all day just reported about, well, today this amount of people died from heart disease, so watch your diet, or, you know, no one's
Get some greens in there, man.
Exactly.
They're a direct representation of what we want to hear, clearly.
Sure.
Because if there's a mass shootings, I mean, you were talking about the guy jumping for joy. I mean, it's true. Reporting on those mass shootings, a lot more interesting than reporting, and some other guys go. The other thing is it kind of is almost that tingly fear where you're like, I'm perfectly healthy. I'm not really at risk for heart disease. I could just go out into the world and get shot. That kind of excites you and energizes. It feels like, you know, if you could do something about it, hey, maybe that percentage won't be there. And that's what excites you, and that's what draws you into the news.
You know what, too? When I was researching stuff about the Virginia Tech shootings, the guy's name is like Sui Cho, and they compiled this huge record of this guy's history and stuff. They talked to everybody who knew him, tried to go ahead and dissect why this guy did what he did. And one defining incident, this guy he came from South Korea, and one of the big things is that when he came to the United States, put into an American school system, was immediately just isolated, alienated. You couldn't talk to anybody, you know, was in this new society. Somebody was saying that when the Columbine shootings happened, that Cho was mesmerized by that on the news and watched it consistently over and over and over again. And that stuck with him all the way up to college and his eventual, you know, massacre in his mass shooting.
People become celebrities or infamous.
Yeah, he was enamored with the idea of, like, you know, being plastered all over the news. And because he sent a manifesto, like a huge box of stuff, to like the New York Times, CNN, and everything that had pictures of him all geared up and stuff. Like, you know, he was, you know, some type of Quentin Tarantino character, you know, and he was enamored by that. So, you know, the media can also, I think, cause some of this stuff, right?
And a lot of people have said that. And this actually leads to our topic from 2 weeks ago. You recall that the ex-military gentleman that was at the table, his name escapes me.
Yeah, Ed.
Ed, he was talking about how he wants the KKK to be out there instead of secretive, because at that point you can start to black them out. We've heard about this big march and the counter-protests and everything out. I mean, it's said that the KKK did that. In another instance, and I forgot the state, KKK had another demonstration. This time the police actually made a surrounding circle and refused to let media anywhere close to them. They broke up the protest after 20 minutes because at that point they were protesting to themselves, and so that's not making any news. Yeah. So people are enamored by being on the news. There's actually a movement that I've seen which says we need to not know these people's name or story at all. Instead of finding out every detail, I mean, we were talking about this, closet guy, lonely, wants to, be heard by society. If they see other people that are like that, getting their name on the news and getting their story told, they feel validated, and that may be causing the problem.
I agree.
Finally, somebody's going to hear me. I can kill all these people. They're going to hear what I have to say.
I agree.
I won't be in the shadows any longer. But man, the fundamental problem is that there is something definitely going on with I think our society, and there's an element to our culture, hyper consumer culture, materialism, this isolation,
separation,
and separation. And you're right, though. Now that you think about it, like as I've gotten older, I'm 32, and I find it increasingly harder to go ahead and make new friends and meet new people. I think, there's a lot of intersecting issues in that. One of them being is that, got to make money, man. Got to make a living. Wages aren't going up, and, things are getting more expensive, which means that I have to spend more time at my job, acquiring, green pieces of paper in order to go ahead and, pay all the bills I have in my life, to go ahead and keep down this never-ending, just pile of debt that slowly is just getting bigger and bigger. It's so much of my life now is not dedicated to building community, but just surviving in this weird first world game we've created for ourselves in society.
Well, at 32, you'll have been right in the middle of the Sallie Mae debacle, so that would be a bad age to be. You got your generation seriously got wrecked between Sallie Mae and the school's requirement to get the rankings up with fake stuff.
Man, you think people? I keep saying this. You think that older generations of Americans are pissed now, right? They see that they've worked their entire life. They bought into this idea of Social Security and maybe pensions and stuff and being able to retire. And this baby boomer generation is now in the retirement stage, and they're looking at their bank accounts and they're like, "This Social Security check ain't paying it. This Medicare is okay, but eventually that runs out, and I got to get up at 7 a.m. to go work at Walmart, and and I've worked my entire life. My retirement account got wiped out in 2007 or 2008 during the Great Recession, and it's here I am sitting at this job I've been working for the past 20 years or so, and everybody around me is in their 20s or something like that, and I can't retire. I got to keep going. That I think is just going to get worse. I mean, you're going to see, people of my generation eventually reach that age, and there ain't going to be jack shit the way things are going.
What's worse is that they actually allowed for loans that have an interest rate so low that you don't actually pay off the interest on a month-to-month basis. Meaning there are some people saddled with college debt that will never actually be out of college debt. No. And because of the way that the rules of Sallie Mae went, unless somebody... And I have to think that this is going to happen eventually, unless somebody changes the rule of Sallie Mae retroactively, you're not allowed to declare bankruptcy. So it's a sad thing that happened to your generation.
You're going to see this generation say, it doesn't even matter for me to pay this back. It's just what's the point? I'm working at this job, barely being paid enough to afford this apartment. I can't save money for my retirement. I have a significant other and we're both barely making it. And you're going to see more and more people just be like, I don't care about the student loan. It means absolutely nothing to me.
But not caring becomes such a non-option under the old Sallie Mae rule. Luckily, they've changed it in the last 4 years. Yeah. That's still not helping your generation.
No.
But in the old Sallie Mae laws, okay, I don't care about the loan. Even if you go onto welfare, they'll garnish your welfare.
Yeah.
In order to pay off Sallie Mae's
It's insane, right?
things. It is absolutely ridiculous.
It's insane. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
What happened to your generation, and combined with schools tripling in price because ranking became so important to schools, and you ended up with a not better education than my generation.
You can't even bankrupt it. You can't even bankrupt student loans.
You can't?
You can't. You cannot even bankrupt it. You can't. There can never be a point in your life you'd be like 70 years old and be like, look, I've been trying to pay you guys back, but it didn't work out. It's
most Sallie Mae is bad enough where you generally, in order to get it on, your parents had to sign a piece of paper without thinking about it. And if you stop paying your student loans, suddenly their wages get punished.
Exactly. Yeah. People will take it from you. No matter where you go, you can't get rid of them. They're stuck. And people are going to be pissed. People are going to there's going to be a generation of people who are going to be mad. They're going to be super mad.
I have to believe the White House is going to come down with something on that retroactively, apply some of Sallie Mae's new rules and stuff like that.
You got to. You're going to be like, man, look, I can't get a job. These robots are doing everything around me, but I'm still paying this loan. What? What's going on here? And so, you know what I did there. Let's go ahead and get into some AI talk. So, Kwaku, why do you want to talk about AI, man? Why does it pick your fancy?
It's something. Well, not always. It's been something I've been interested in for the last couple of years. I've read some books about it that have made some points that I think is true. Like at first, I never really thought much of it, and then I kind of thought it was just exaggerated. Like, iRobot's never gonna happen, or Terminator's bullshit, or something like that. But
I hope Terminator's bullshit.
Me too. But the last couple of years, I've kind of... I read a book called Superintelligence. I don't know if anyone's read that.
No, do tell.
It's a book by a Swedish philosopher, Nick Bostrom, and he pretty much talks about how... the book's essentially about how we're eventually going to get to a point where we design something that could be existentially harmful to us as humans. And after reading that, it definitely changed my perspective on everything. And I'm in the camp where I feel like it's something that we really have to be on the lookout for, because best case scenario, we're not going to get to that point for, let's say, 100 years. Which I think will be way before. But even if it's that, that's still something that we need to be thinking about now. I think it's going to be such an existential kind of event for humans that it's something that we should think about. I personally think that generally as mainstream we're not paying enough attention to it, and when we do, it's more kind of in the comical, again, iRobot, Terminator way of thinking about it, which isn't the way I necessarily think about it. So it's just something that it's interesting to me that I think we should be paying more attention.
Well, I mean, so what's this thing that's coming? We're going to admit, what type of thing?
I think eventually we're a little bit away now with, something way more advanced than, let's say, Siri or Google Voice, for instance. But I think we're eventually going to get to a point where we create something that can make changes to its own source code, if you will. And I'm not a programmer, but I think it's essentially something to that. If you look at intelligence, so let's just say information processing and retention, I mean, it's going to get to a point where electrons move a lot faster than what we have in our brains, essentially, the neurons, if you will. It's going to get to a point where it's learning so quickly, it's going to be ahead of us as far as its comprehension. And then we can also look at a point where it can become super intelligent, but without being conscious, which is scary. So it almost does everything by autopilot. It's essentially like a computer now, where you give it a command, it does it.
And there's just
It
like
doesn't think.
this runaway algorithm it'll just go into
That's
where
exactly.
you just will not be able to stop its
I think that is the
computation.
eventual. That's the eventuality.
That's pretty bonkers. That's pretty nuts. The more I think about it, because it makes me think about that experiment that Facebook was doing, where they created these two programs that were like talking to each other, quote unquote, and so they turned on these two simulated like AI computers, supercomputers, and they just watched these computers have a conversation, and then the conversation got to a point where it was apparent that these two computers knew what they were saying to each other, but it was completely indecipherable to us what they were talking about.
So I in recognizing that would probably come up at this meeting, I had heard passively that wasn't what happened at all and had taken it at face value. But I've actually looked into the details on the greatly over-exaggerated story. So what happened was two computers were supposed to represent, a person attempting to purchase and somebody attempting to communicate them. And they had a certain number of objects which they had to communicate that these objects need to get over here. And what actually happened was bad programming. So computer AI, Siri, and all these things are made to try to pull out certain relevant words that go with something and ignore every other word because they're not advanced enough to be able to contextualize an entire sentence. So what happened was with this bad programming is they didn't reward the computer for saying all the irrelevant words. So it looked out and tried to find conversation pieces, picked out the words that it knew, decided that repeating the same word, and because they were both based on the same programming, the other system picked it up. This isn't the first time it's going to happen. It's not the last. They didn't learn how to speak English properly, so they were using a shorthand where they would just say the word I, and the other computer said, oh, I need to move 5 items. And that was literally all that happened in the system. It wasn't a big deal. It was actually just bad programming that a story got out to, I forgot the name of the media group, and they just blew up this ridiculous story of the AI. It's
everywhere. It's like on TechCrunch and stuff like that. It's like on a lot of sites now.
Yeah, just look up the actual story behind the story, and it's really a nothing thing. It's bad programming that they shut down so that they could reprogram the computers and reward them for speaking a little better English.
Well, there you go. Problem solved.
I think the humanity will be in jeopardy by someone who misuse AI before AI become conscious, because I think human error or humanity itself can be its biggest own challenge before we proverbially think the Skynet moment.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of my fears. It's like, I guess in a perfect world, we may stop maybe right before we get to that point, and then kind of all have like a giant, let's say, Manhattan Project. Hey, how are we going to do this? How are we going to handle this? But in reality, Facebook's competing with Google, it's competing with Apple, we're competing with China and Russia. Well, it's almost like a zero-sum game. Who the first thing, country, person, company, whatever, that I guess reaches that point could potentially become like the most powerful person in the world overnight.
Yeah, I think that would we're damn sure close to it. I mean, I would say that there's these computers out there that are crunching these numbers and trying to predict what a human would want before they would know that they want it, right? And with things like social media, that makes that a very much easier thing to do. I mean, it's a difficult process, I imagine, but when you're constantly uploading things that you like and things that you want, and billions of people are out here doing this simultaneously, I imagine that it's not too big of a next step for some big data crunching type of company out there, or think tank group, or sponsored institution to come up with some way to crunch this data in a manner they could start predicting human trends and then start guiding society in certain directions, and we won't even know it.
So, I mean, one, that already happens these days as far as the number. I mean, you mentioned the number crunching in Google Analytics. People pull it up, see what people are trending, and already predict everything towards and push them towards that area. And most of us don't think that on a day-to-day basis. But that's almost okay. What AI does right now, and the reason we don't have anything close to true AI, all it does is follows an algorithm that says, if I see this, do this. And the number of branches on that algorithm are the limiting factor on what a computer can do. You would literally need to be able to introduce a randomizer that would change these algorithms to the point where it'd go beyond that. And similar to finding the information and what goes on, and similar to the Big Blue experiment in chess, what's always been found to be true, and I think what will continually to be true for centuries and centuries and centuries, especially since we're leaving the Industrial Revolution number 2, what I think is going to continue to be true, a human and a machine working together are going to be inherently better than either of them working alone.
You don't think you'll ever get to a point where the machine will... Because even now, like, what we have right now isn't true AI.
Nowhere close.
No, exactly. No, I'm with you on that. Like, let's say serial... No, that's not actual AI. But you don't think they'll ever get to a point where, let's say, instead of it just following an algorithm, like, you know, these are the options I have for this situation, these are the options that, you know, always pick, let's say, the one that I think is best. It's going to start essentially creating... I wouldn't say creating its own options, but I mean so in the fact, like...
writing its own code and stuff
exactly, because isn't that going to be like what we kind of want it to do eventually?
So
that's want it to help us.
It's always under ideal, and in the spirit of helping us, like I do have IntelliSense that tells me you should probably put this code over here to improve your code, and it'll execute a little bit faster. So computer and I already kind of work together on that, but to make something work outside of its context, I'm probably going to say we're going to figure out the human genome and be able to create more efficient brains to do that before we actually have a computer AI that is capable of that level.
Right. I think some weeks ago, I read about machine learning on YouTube. It's a very fascinating topic.
It is, right?
But what comes away, there's certainly, like you said, there are limitations. Like the machine algorithm to be able to estimate everything, to build a model, you require a lot more data, a lot more computing power to actually. So what happened is that the humans who invented these machine learning use like kind of heuristic mathematical tools to help the machine cut down the processing it takes. So what it comes down to, the machine won't be good at, as Dave said, a much more prescribed task. Unlike humans, we could have more modular thinking. We could have these different modules we learn as we grow. We can piece them together. We can adapt more than machines do.
Well, what's the definition of artificial intelligence?
So to me, intelligence is just processing and retaining information.
Okay.
Artificial would mean an artificial. I
think what we're getting to.
I guess what I'm trying to express here is like, well, what is intelligence? What's the definition here? What's the?
I think when we're talking about artificial intelligence, we're taking the definition to mean that the computer can go beyond its programming and make decision points that were in no way defined by its creator.
But aren't we, I mean, are you saying that as humans we do that?
If you were to recreate a human being, and let's say my mom didn't know the decisions I'm going to make, she tried to control for as many factors as she could and, give me the upbringing and stuff that she thought would make the derivatively perfect human being. But there were a lot of random things that I just went off and did, responding to other outside influences and pulling that information in and processing into new skills, many of which she doesn't have or would have ever anticipated that I would have.
But isn't there some core programming inside of our DNA, hardwired to go ahead and quote unquote run. I mean, our goal is to survive long enough to reproduce, right?
Sure.
And so isn't that a imperative? Isn't that a directive? Isn't everything that we do still within inside of that hard-coded context?
Kind of. My goal is no longer just to live and reproduce. Like, I've made the decision to not have children, so the reproduction is out there. I do want to survive, but living alone is not enough for me anymore at this point. I have my own arbitrary set of goals of moving around the world, even though it's probably not the most efficient way to live. And I'm no longer, having gotten married, I no longer try to spread my seed to as many suitable mates as possible, like the animal algorithm would say. So I've gone well beyond my programming, I would say.
Well,
so you're a human. To me, that's
human.
Really a human, yeah.
Well, I would, play devil's advocate. I would say that, a lot of the things that you're doing are self-protective kind of rationalizations to, cope with maybe not doing certain, genetic imperatives. Like, all right, so you may not want to have children, but you still have, sexual urges, right?
Sure.
You still act on those urges, sometime or another. And when you don't act on those urges, maybe something else is going on out there that's preventing you. But I guess that essence is still there. Maybe is what I'm getting to. I'm trying to think this through in real time.
The 7 layers of Buddhist philosophy, I mean, I've got all the major low tiers taken care of. I don't have any need for food or shelter. I've got that taken care of, and life is going to take care of that. Food, shelter, sleep. I've got my emotional need taken care of. I've kind of stabilized myself. I've got my love need taken care of. I've fallen in love in life. And yes, the 4th tier is actually your sexual need, and I've got my sexual need taken care of. So at that point, I can be exploring like the levels beyond, and 5th, 6th, 7th. I don't believe in suffrage, so of course I'll never be a Buddhist, but I can start to look at the more I'm atheist, but I'll call it spiritual needs and fulfillments that you can.
But I guess, does that mean anything?
Doesn't
genetically?
So that's the key. And
does that mean?
And a computer would say, "Hey, this is inefficient. Let's get rid of it." A human says, "This is what I feel like I need. It doesn't mean anything genetically. I'm still going to do it, and therefore I've gone outside of my programming."
But ultimately, is it efficient? I guess if you're looking at it in a very, very wide context of like the human race, really, is it efficient? Which I'd say no. I mean, not really.
Yeah.
If you're looking at it just as far as we should be spreading as much as possible, if you're looking at just in that plain kind of hardcore, like evolutionary sense of surviving and replicating, I would say ultimately, if you're looking at it from a very wide lens, it's counterproductive for us to be like
this.
It
is.
Well, go ahead.
Which I was going to say takes me to another thing that I heard about AI, which, let's say it does get to that point where the singularity and it's able to learn at like, someone said, estimate like 20,000 years of human progress per week, that quickly. Would it then supersede us in importance?
Well, I mean, I think maybe
I would say yes.
Well, maybe that question is circular because we're defining the importance. What is important.
Okay, so let's say. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think what human find what's ultimately important is not necessarily going to be the same with, as you say, like the machine would.
Yeah, like who's creating these standards? I mean,
like there are people might find acquiring wealth is important, but later on they will find and turn out hollow, as they don't have friends and find relationships and people around. Having good people around them is much more imperative.
Well, I mean, as far as human race surviving and replicating.
So, as far as that's concerned, I mean,
it goes back to the hard coding. It goes back to surviving and replicating, right?
Well, but just real quick, let's say that we're eventually humans are gonna, I feel like, have to leave Earth. Either we're gonna mess it up, overpopulation. Some of us or all of us are gonna have to leave Earth, right?
all that's back to our hard coding, right?
The nearest habitable planet, I guess, other than Mars, which isn't really habitable right now, at least. As I believe with our technology, it's like 70,000 years it would take us to get there. I think it's something like that. Let's say an AI becomes sentient, it would probably be able to figure out a way much quicker than we would to be able to get there. And if our ultimate goal as a race is to survive and spread, wouldn't it then become, I guess in some ways, more important than us? Because it would be able to essentially help us explore a lot quicker than we would if it was just us. It's kind of what I was getting at.
I mean, but you know, we still created it though and gave it that imperative, right?
Well, didn't we just define AI as going outside of your imperatives?
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So
I guess go for it.
I was going to say, like, a lot of this is going really far down the line of fiat. Like, let's pretend a computer could upgrade the next generation of itself. Wouldn't AI get to the point where it would say, hey, if I create the next AI, I'll be outdated, so therefore it's in my best interest to not create the next AI?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So, you know, is a component of intelligence is, you know, watching out for self-preservation and survival. You know, I mean, we're giving a lot of human attributes to the idea of what something is intelligence, and you know, I'm not so sure that. I mean, I guess that's the only frame of reference, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So it's hard to think outside of that framework. You know, it's impossible. And
I'm going to assume that once we get to that point, we will keep things in containment boxes. Because one guy can go crazy, and then another guy can turn off the power system because that one guy went crazy and created super AI that wants to destroy the world.
But as far as that would require just an amount of cooperation that I don't think we have yet. Because let's say that kind of AI is invented here. And we're like, oh shit, you know, we need to keep this under wraps, and we're sensible with it. Well, I'm sure in China and in Russia, you know, they're probably thinking, no, we need to do what we need to do. So, I mean, imagine if North Korea gets it.
Putin's already been quoted as saying the power of the next generation will be dependent on who's able to most efficiently create AI. Sure. And he's actually even talking about a much more limited AI, as in an AI that can distinguish between one type of human and another, i.e. a Russian and a non-Russian as an example, and take them down. So that's something we're much closer to than these deep thinking AIs. Yeah. I mean, we've already got facial recognition going on.
I'm still kind of deep in this like rabbit hole thinking of like, you know, I mean, how much are we in control of really our own destiny? I mean, have we really even escaped our base programming as an organism? I mean, can I pose the question? You know, I mean, are we really, you know, intelligent? Or is all of this here just manifestations, higher level manifestations of like a base need?
And I think it goes back to the Buddhist philosophy that I do respect. I mean, you've got tiers. Like once you take care of the physical needs, then you can go on to making sure your emotional needs are taken care of. Make sure you have your love needs taken care of, whatever that's defined as for you. And then you get to go further and further. Your spiritual needs, feeling connection to the world.
There's no end.
Right. And we don't even know.
It's just keeping yourself busy.
Right. And there will be a point. I mean, a lot of jobs are going out. No, it's probably not going to be 2025 or really anytime soon. There will be a point where a lot less jobs are needed than are going to be produced. And there will be higher unemployment and stuff like that.
Yeah, let's see how we handle that. That's going to be interesting.
I think we'll handle it just the way we are now already. Less like for the fact that job growth has been so high. Job growth for things that do not require a college degree is less than 1% of the jobs that have been created since 1970.
Yeah, we'll see how important the college degree is, right? You know, coming here in the future, I think that those standards are going to go ahead and have to change.
Absolutely,
have to. It's already becoming meaningless to have a BA or a BS, right? It's
pretty much. In most
yes.
You got to do what? You buy it online, you know? I mean, Phoenix, where'd you get it? Everything's going to be, your skills, your demonstrable, I think, work experience in the future is, what have you done?
Sure.
Because that's really, I think, the only accurate measurement. It's like, where have you been in the past? What work have you done? This paper here of you going through a lot of this formal, I guess, more intellectualized, education doesn't mean, I guess, much. How were you out in the field? What did you accomplish in the field?
I've made that argument, and I'd love to believe that's true, but I honestly think there will always be that archaic thing of, did you get your piece of paper? Unfortunately, I think people who don't get, for the fact that I hate Sallie Mae so much and all that, and what it did, and how much college costs, I think it's a base requirement. If somebody gets out there without a piece of paper, they might as well kiss job propositions goodbye.
I agree with you. I agree with you as in, from the perspective of somebody coming into the workforce. But I guess more of what I'm talking about, if you're going to find a job that has meaning, or maybe from an employer's perspective, it's like your paperwork aside, how valuable of an asset are you, to this company.
Right. But you do have the paperwork as a prerequisite to get into the door to prove that.
Yeah. But, at the same time, is the CEO even is an employer even consciously thinking about that paperwork? Or is it just it's just going to be a baseline standard, right?
Yeah.
As in you go online, fill out an application, you put in all your marks and stuff. It won't even hit the guy's, the HR's desk if it doesn't have a check mark box for, you got your BA or whatever. I don't know. But, humans can surprise us. I mean, employers can go ahead and break that system if they so choose.
They could make it worse and choose to start looking for masters. And they're tending to go to the other way right
looking
now.
For what
the master's degrees?
Oh, yeah. Companies out there where they look for specific talent, that's beyond, just the rudimentary, do you got the BA or you got your master's and stuff, or, going through the norm of a stack of resumes on, from HR. I think that there's some companies looking outside of that model.
Genetics, I think that's going to be the next.
That's going to be the next thing.
Also technology.
And I think genetics is the much scarier aspect than AI could ever be. Because I think we're actually closer to the human genome.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I want to say even it was something Congress signed. This was a few months ago. Along with that, the whole, I guess, bill with the internet or the internet providers. But it was something that, it hasn't been signed. It was introduced, a bill, which, you know how these things start. It's introduced in years and years of lobbying, where employers can actually, have access to, your medical results or something like that. And I was thinking just how easy it is now to do those genetic tests. Yeah. I'm thinking that's going to be the way, because they don't want to hire someone. Well, obviously they're going to have some kind of test to check your intelligence and your history, but they also don't want to hire someone with a history of disease, because they don't want to have to foot any kind of bill or.
That is true too. Minimize
that would be fascinating.
Cost.
I never thought of the genetic testing for employment.
I'm telling you, in 20 years, I'm like, that's what they're going to start doing.
Oh, you have a predisposition for being addicted to certain types of substances. I don't think you're hired.
It's something like that.
You're a little bit loose.
Yeah.
We only even hire squares.
Yeah, that and your internet, I think.
Yeah,
I get to the point where they just type in your social and just.
But I think there'll be a rejection from that, though. I don't think that humanity will tolerate that. I think that type of system will break down.
We've already gotten that block. He's completely right on that one. Already, there's been a request by the government to just type in somebody's social security number to make sure that they're a legal immigrant, and that's getting backlash. There's the type in a number. Because it'd be so easy to scan somebody's driver's license. Can you buy a gun from me? We're at a gun show. Pop. Okay, yes you can. We're at that point, but it's being blocked.
Yeah, we're getting there, and I think the counter argument is always generations.
I was gonna say it's being blocked now, but
it's the next generation comes, they're more used to it, and they're more used to it, and used to it. But I still think that there is a point. There is a point where it's blatant, no matter what conditioning you have. I think that you're systematically being controlled in a way that is impossible for you to act freely. And I think that humans will naturally reject, because that's against their own survival, I mean, getting back to genetics here, is that if you're in this, hypothetical future, right, and you're in this world where it's getting to the point where the only way you're able to survive is if you have certain type of genetics, well, that you're going to instantly reject that. You'll be like, well, if I'm not chosen, that means that I die. That means that I can't survive in this world. And I'm here, and I want to survive. Mm-hmm. So, people are going to go ahead and definitely, I think, reject that, man. I don't know.
That's an immediate. That's a more immediate, like genetic, like gene doping I've been hearing about now.
Gene doping?
Gene doping, where instead of taking like steroids and stuff, they're trying to like find ways to just go and alter your genes completely.
Oh, man.
And I would say, can't like parents like pick out the color of their kids' eyes or like something like that already? And man, that is just a slippery slope we're heading down with all that stuff.
Sure, you can hear that like on the black market, right?
I'm serious.
Hey man, you got some genes for some like green eyes.
Well, it's been going since the 1930s.
Eugenics.
Eugenics
I'm
was
thinking
huge.
like, we're gonna get to the point where, oh crap, my kid's gonna have a disability or something. Oh, I don't want him.
Well, we're already at that point.
Yeah, I know, but I just mean like, or he may not be smart. His, this gene test tells me like he may not be this smart.
Very smart person.
Exactly. Or just, when it's just like.
Got an ugly one. Let's try again.
Exactly.
How reliable these gene tests are.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah. This one's cross-eyed, man. I have to toss that back in the bin. You're gonna have to renege.
Yeah.
Redeal me on that. I don't know. It's those are some scary propositions. The biggest struggles for us right now even keep up with this innovation, and that's the problem. Is like the faster and faster things go, the less we're able to keep up with it, which means we kind of lose control of it, and we can't be in control of this progression of technology. I think it crashes in this metaphorical car. I think
so.
Yeah.
Let's see, man. He just. Really this. Well, not really. 90s, I guess, really, with internet, and that was when it started. I'd say, and then once the iPhone came out, then it just really...
So that's the fear of the chessboard model, which was the big talk, second machine age, artificial intelligence, all this, where every 18 months that technology doubles and eventually get out of control. Last 5 years, things have been going at such an abysmally slow rate that we're starting to run into, hey, wait a second, this isn't real AI, and we don't know how to get to the next step. The iPhone's got a better camera now. That makes it better, right? The last couple upgrades has been a little bit of screen size
that's true.
And a little bit of battery size, and that's it. So we're actually getting to the point where we're getting technologies we can keep up. And yes, We've got some artificial genetic breakup and that backup where ethics things has prevented it from getting through, but slowly people are breaking those barriers and getting that out. That may be the next push, but that's only because the technology's here. We've left the second machine age, and I think what you're going to see politicians complaining about, slow growth. You're going to hear that for probably the next 100, 200 years. Because we've hit the end of our revolution, and we've got to wait for the next one.
The next 200 years, man.
If
we're still around doing the same shit 200 years from now, it's game over. We might as well just hang it up and toss it out, man. If we're still going through like Donald Trumps and shit in 200 years from now, it's over. I think that's enough proof right there that we couldn't make it. Yeah. We couldn't break out the box. I mean. I don't know. I think that sounds about right. I mean, but maybe entering an age of like efficiency, where we are kind of mastering the technology that we have came up with. That's happened in the past too, right?
Yeah, I agree. Especially with
engineering, in the first industrial age and stuff, we really mastered kind of the fundamentals of engineering and kind of mass planning. Then once we got that down, something came along and go, oh, well, now that we know these fundamental concepts of this stuff, let's try exploring this new thing. So yeah, it would take a long time for us, I think, to go ahead and become really efficient at the information processing that, all the tools we've created. And, but we may have machines that can go ahead and speed up that process, right?
Yeah, I feel like we're
not doing long form math anymore here trying to figure out stuff. Yeah.
I feel like human beings' only way to actually survive would be that point with AI. And I mean, ultimately, I'm not talking about the next 50 years. Would be because, again, I mean, there's only so smart human beings can get incrementally. It's going to have to be something outside of ourselves to take us off of this planet. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, again, this is something I think we're eventually going to just meld our consciousness with AI.
Yeah.
So that way we all technically live forever.
We're going to be like in the pools, like a Minority Report. Remember that movie?
Not our physical bodies, just our consciousness. Find it melded with an AI, and then get us off this planet.
And
Or out of this solar system, really not the planet, solar system.
With the AI.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what's...
I don't even know how that looks, man. I immediately get like pictures in my head of like the Matrix when he was like on a pod. And he's like, jacked into this huge column. I don't know, I mean, part of me thinks that maybe we'll go ahead and take this technology, we'll use it to create a perfect synchronicity between humanity and the planet that we're on. I think that that's a possibility too. That instead of going to the stars, maybe something bad does happen on this planet that reduces our population significantly. And the people who are left learn and they switch their ideology from infinite growth in a certain direction to a paradigm that has to deal with a synchronicity, and we create technology that just allows us to exist perpetually in a certain state.
You'd hope so, but I haven't seen any examples. I mean, if anything, one thing we are programmed to do is take ourselves the most into consideration. I mean, the whole selfish gene idea where we are set to make ourselves the best there, so somebody will inevitably want more power and realize they have to go outside this structure. And it really only takes a small part of the population, because then the other population's like, hey, wait a second, they've got that advantage. That's how genetics works. That's the reason I'm 6 foot tall instead of the 5 foot tall of not 1,000 years ago or whatnot. I mean, my ancestors decided, hey, I need to eat a little bit more food, and suddenly you've got a 6 foot David running around. So,
well, I don't know. I mean, I think if there was some type of cataclysm, something that awakened human mindset to maybe or pay attention to different things that that could be a path where we just create a perfect biosphere. We exist in that. I don't think that's too far out of the scope. We see it in organisms. We see organisms that perpetually regenerate itself, renew itself, just exist indefinitely. Perfected that tiny gene set, right? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't become more evolved, but it doesn't degenerate either. It just cycles itself over and over and over again. I don't see why that couldn't be a possibility.
Not impossible, but I don't foresee the human race going that route anytime soon. But I foresee that us as a selfish race in general, and we'll use whatever's around, and people will want to get out of any structure you try to put them in.
Right.
Otherwise it won't be human. I mean, the world of the perfect people, what was the Gulliver's Travels talked about the perfect people, where they would just sit in the room blind and wouldn't do anything, and that was what made them perfect. And they offered him perfection, which he was about to take, and then he noticed that none of them could see and none of them were doing anything, and so chose to push it down. Gulliver's Travels was a fascinating book, well ahead of its time.
But hey, let's move on to let's go back and get grounded.
So speaking of selfishness,
taxes, right?
Taxes. Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Have you? Okay, so has anyone been following this
here and there? Yeah.
Because as far as I know, and again, this is me doing basic research. Mm-hmm. It's just all, hey, we have a plan. This is kind of what we want to do. We'll get back to the details.
So they have introduced the details, and they are all. I mean, it's a plan that does two things. One, it perpetuates the Republican ultimate plan to make it look like they're doing a ton for the middle class when they're doing a lot for the rich. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's under the somewhat misguided idea that if we lower the corporate tax rate, It's the whole trickle-down economy. So the corporate tax rate would reduce from 35 to 25. All of us would get easy taxes, and the standard deduction would be doubled, which means that, yes, that was where the middle income people get their stuff. Now, the savings at the high level, where you have a 35% on that third tier of taxes, which is much lower, combined with a hugely lower corporate tax rate, will lead to incredible bonuses for the wealthy and the end of, and it's going to cost $1.5 trillion to keep that going over a 10-year period. So it's horribly flawed. It's not going to pass, but it doesn't matter. It appeals to Trump's base. Exactly. It says, I'm doing something. This is a very well documented thing. Yeah. And by putting that double deduction, putting things that look like they're helping the middle class, they're going to continue to have the Democrats who jump down the gut of anything and just like panic and scream like Chicken Little. Like, they're going to get them to panic again, which is going to make them look stupid. And we're going to have Trump as our president again in 2020.
I like that. No, you're right.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think that sums up the Republican tax plan. Yeah, the stuff that I was going ahead and reading before I came here. That's about it. That the idea is after a decade of time, more money will be redistributed to the wealthiest sectors of society, and middle class will be left with the bill or the higher tax rate at the end of the day. And
the working class, right?
Ultimately speaking, there's the thing that we always don't like to talk about, because it either involves taking away privileges or increasing taxes, and that is, we've got a deficit. So $1.5 trillion will be added to the deficit, which will overall make the dollar go down. Now, the wealthier got wealthier, so they'll feel a little bit less than the middle class, and then the poor aren't even getting any new deductions out of this, and their money is worth less. So they're going to get really hit hard. So everybody's going to get hit. Yeah. Middle class will probably come off slightly worse, but not too bad. But our lowest class of our society will be all but left to rebel.
Yeah, there's,
and then
which is most people.
Going to vote
because what's the definition of a middle class in the United States of America, right? What's the pay grade on that? What's middle class considered?
So Hillary Clinton, in her new book, said that we define the middle class by white Americans who work in factories.
Where are they at?
These are the people. So these are the pro-NRA people.
Yeah, right, yeah.
They're the 0.1% that we kind of talk about, because you're right, there aren't a ton of them, but that's whenever you're talking about like Trump appealing by the latest repeal on the gas things. The service sector is hugely larger than these manufacturing group, and yet everything is isolated to try to help to these people. And that is what's defined as the middle class in this country, because they vote.
Insane.
Sure.
They're the only people out there voting.
And not only do they vote on very simple perspectives. Are you helping my industry? So if you're able to easily appeal to somebody while still keeping all the power and money for yourself, they're a very appealing person for both the Democrats and Republicans to try to appeal for.
That makes sense.
Yep, that sounds about right. Yeah, I guess maybe it's this voting block in factories is like the just twisted remnants of unionism.
It is
because that. I mean, that's kind of where this comes from. Is the neoliberal idea of politics. From that period of time. I want to say 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah, I mean, it really got introduced well before that. That was in the 1800s, where you had the rise of the factories.
The rise of the factory.
And then they were immediately unionized and all that. And I guess you're right. After the Great Depression, where it really took off. But
that, because a lot of power was in the voter base at that time.
And apparently still is. Factors. You've still got a group that votes as a block, and that's important. So many of us are such complicated creatures. We're not reducible to one issue. They really are, and they always get out and vote. And one thing that intellectuals are great at doing is losing to people who are very simple people
Yeah.
because they've gone, oh, my vote doesn't matter. Oh, I don't want to get out of the house. Oh,
exactly.
I like this guy, or I don't like this guy, but I don't like this guy either.
Yeah.
So I'm just not going to vote.
All the rationalizations in the
whereas-
world.
And then spend 4 years intellectualizing.
It's just tragic that this is what we have left of unions. You know, it's just these group of people who are pretty simple-minded and
but still very powerful because
Yeah.
they consistently vote.
and consistently vote against their own interests. You know, it's like that's it. That's the only people that are left. Where there was a time period where it was a powerful bloc. The unions represented the American people. You know, in the workforce, and just not anymore.
You don't think that they're a powerful bloc? I mean, Clinton gave, for better for worse, said the entire campaign came down to the Democrats losing that block of people that we're saying isn't very powerful. Now. So I'd argue they're one of the most powerful.
I think that they still have power when it comes to voting and whatnot. I don't know. I guess I think that lobbied interests have more power today than union interests in the United States. At the height of unionism, the opposite was true. That unions was kind of like a lobbying force.
Well, and I'm going to say that both of them, so back in the day, the lobbied interests were made by the unions, and therefore we're really looking out for the people.
Mm-hmm.
The people have no less power. The lobbied interests have become so powerful because they've learned to appeal to these very simple one-leveled group.
Yeah.
They're like, yes, we can say this, and yes, we can pretend to be doing something about it.
Yeah.
Well, we actually fulfill our own agenda. So it's just... They've
so
gotten
real
a
power's
store.
lost, real effective, power coming from the average person is lost.
But they still are the group to capture, so they at least have to give the perception that these things are happening.
Yeah. Where are we at? We're at 8:54. I think we're about done.
I think that about covers it.
We're about we're ring it dry.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the next one I want to do is kind of a light topic, because
too heavy lately.
Yeah, man, it's just like the world's just falling apart around us, dude. It's just so heavy. I'm kind of thinking, well, what's light to talk about, right? That is also, I don't know, maybe a little bit meaningful, and I'm having a hard time coming up with a topic. Only thing I came up with recently is that we can get nostalgic and reminisce on a decade of some sort.
The problem is it going to be a decade that we've survived? Because if so, 90s is as close as you can come.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
I just actually watched that CNN
Exactly.
documentary on the 90s.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
If you guys
what documentary? Netflix?
The 90s.
No, it's on
CNN
I have the
documentaries.
CNN app. I don't know if you have the
They
channel.
did the 80s and they did the 90s.
Is it at Nat Geo or something had a good one too? But no, it's good.
I've
I have
got
one about
Cody,
the
so I've got
60s.
everything, so I can find
Okay,
it.
yeah, you can grab the app and then I just cast it, but I want to say it might just be called the 90s.
Okay.
But that's what I was thinking. Is like immediately the 90s came ahead. That's the one where we're all have lived through generally and have been conscious.
Yeah,
and,
the 90s.
And aware. Not like we can do let's do the 40s, guys. See what was up back in the
That's
day.
interesting.
All right.
80s actually is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. But so I was thinking about maybe we can do a light topic on that. Not sure when I will go ahead and schedule that.
Sure.
But I'm going to put that out there. And maybe we can do it at a place. I don't know, have a couple drinks.
Sure.
Shoot the shit and talk about some. Talk about Bill Clinton and because I have some fun things I like to say about Bill Clinton.
Sure.
He's an interesting guy.
He is an interesting guy.
Talk about all types of pop culture references.
Hey, I grew up before you guys even knew him. I lived in Arkansas through my childhood.
All
so-
right.
Oh,
Yeah,
What was he
wow,
like?
man.
What was he like as a
He was
governor?
actually pretty cool. He was a fantastic governor. He took good care. He came and spoke at our synagogue because he and Jimmy Carter had actually gone over to Israel to kind of do this negotiation process and stuff. And he was one of the few governors that was selected, and Jimmy Carter. So he talked about his visit to Israel and stuff. So.
Yeah, man. You pay attention to like the conspiracy documentaries and stuff out there on YouTube, though. You like get this picture of like Bill Clinton, like this.
Yeah, you seen the Clinton,
just,
or the Clinton crime video.
Right. You know,
which
pimping it out there, choking women and stuff.
Yeah, people buy it, man.
I'll kill you.
Too much information.
You know, the Clinton Cash. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, did you watch that one? Clinton Cash?
I did. What was a little scary about it was that, Breitbart is full of it. It actually fact-checked. So it was a little bit scary that all of this stuff really did happen. Like, they even go in. Hillary actually goes into it a little bit and says, yes, I like making money in speeches, but I didn't make any changes on that. And I'm like, do you really believe that? Like, she did go from almost broke to now having a net worth of $150 million. So that did happen. And she does these, $750,000, $1 million speeches did happen. And for better, for worse, I mean, the people were already kind of in power that got money, but they did happen to get some deals. So Breitbart normally doesn't fact check, so you can usually ignore them. In the case of the Clinton Cash thing, one thing people say, Breitbart seem to have gotten at least fact. Now they put the darkest light possible onto
I was going to say, that's my thing. Is it worth a watch, or is
that.
it just the same old stuff that I've been hearing for the last...
It's the usual thing where it's like got dark music and then talks about her going across and says it's 2000 and, the Clintons have just left the presidency and are in debt. And then she gets the Secretary of State, and then, $750,000 speeches start appearing, and then these interests start getting all these contracts and stuff. And it's...
But I've seen some crazy stuff on YouTube about the Clintons. About, like Bill Clinton, like, choking out women and stuff, talking about, like, if you ever tell somebody that, we had sex, I'll kill you, and all that type of stuff about her infidelity.
There's actually a new, mini film series that's actually put out by Democrats saying, what if all of the conspiracy theories were true? So the first one they have is about Michelle Obama as a black nationalist that goes around threatening people with a gun in her hand and stuff like that.
Wow.
So it's like, if all of this is true, then this is what everything was like.
Then everything was like. That's hilarious. Yeah, it's nuts, man. I'm part of some Facebook groups online, and I don't contribute too much to them, but I just like to go ahead and watch some of the arguments and stuff. And
I don't even bother.
I just start all the arguments. I like to put up
drop a bomb
random
on comment
thing and then
just let it go. Just let it go. I do that sometimes
because I've got about 70% liberals and 30% ultra conservatives on my group, so makes for makes for some good arguments sometimes.
And I'm guessing no moderates, right?
A limited number I've got, but they
moderates
tend to be
on Facebook, man. They're not doing other things.
Moderates are quieter. I mean, unfortunately, they're less likelihood because if you look at the splits on the party, the moderate parties on both sides are being pushed out to the level where the one person I thought could take out Trump in 2020, Warren, just put up that idea of the Social Security for all, and I'm like, well, she just went off the deep end. What happened? Because I actually liked Warren.
Got to go ahead and cater to that base now, So, I mean, and some of the Bernie Sanders groups and stuff out there, so their social media is insane, dude. Like, it's...
Bernie's always been nuts.
His supporters are hardcore.
Super hardcore.
Oh, super hardcore.
Don't say something bad about Bernie.
If there's one person that I would have wanted to be president less than Trump, it would have been Bernie Sanders.
Oh, wow.
Me, it would no one less.
Nobody less than Trump for me,
Trump
man.
is somewhat...
Maybe Ted Cruz is one of them,
Trump is controllable not stupid, but he just puts out ideas with no intent of them actually following through.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, Bernie is scary in that he puts mathematically infeasible ideas out there that he believes 100%, and he would get his group rallied around them. And if the Democrats stepped in and took over with Bernie there as president, the country would go off the deep end and go bankrupt. I mean, it's just...
That's interesting. We need to talk about the politics of Bernie Sanders for one of these.
Sure.
And because to be honest, I mean, we always get the surface level stuff, right? We always get the class, warfare type of ideas coming from Bernie Sanders, and economic inequality. That's the surface level stuff, but I don't think many people go into the in depth of exactly what Bernie Sanders represents.
And that's good.
And that's really good for
because
him.
none of it makes any fucking sense.
Yeah. He's. We rarely hear about, well, what does actually Bernie Sanders believe? Like, what are you proposing
I'm not
here?
too familiar with his.
The thing is that it's coming though.
Yeah.
Is that the pendulum has swung so far to the right that I think we have a lot of Machiavellian voters out here that are like, you know what, because Trump is in office and he is so crazy and wild. Wait till an election comes around where I can vote my crazy wild person.
Right.
And so they're going to go ahead and vote for the most extreme person they possibly can think of.
On the other side.
Just to go ahead and to get back in some partisan revenge type of way at the other side. It's crazy.
Not revenge. It's trying to go so far away. I mean, we've had, in modern times, we have a continually swinging pendulum with the exception of Reagan being followed by Bush, where we refuse to elect the same parties 2 terms in a row.
Yeah.
So, and even with Bush, we had the one president that didn't really get the term, aside from the second term since Jimmy Carter, and then before that, we hadn't had any in a long time. I mean, we generally bring in the incumbent, and then when the incumbent's done, we go with the opposite party because we didn't like what they did.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's back and forth. But I think I think there's a tinge of revenge politics that is starting to manifest.
Well, I just think it was like a little pendulum that was going like this.
Now
it's going like...
There's some Trump people, they just... You cannot even rationalize on a basic level with them, and they know they're wrong, but their whole point is not to. It's not about the facts. It's about I didn't like Obama as a politician, and so since I did not like him, and I'm gonna always be in Trump's corner, just so I can go ahead and go aha. At the other side,
everyone's just playing for their
It was
team.
who's the biggest outsider vote was what kind of determined everything. Because everybody knew that they didn't like what was getting, and everybody always thinks that extreme change is the better way to go. And that's,
I don't know.
Trump as an outsider is certainly what got him through the primaries. Where you had
was Obama somewhat of an outsider when he was campaigning?
Obama,
Obama was definitely an outsider. He was a first-term senator that decided to jump and become a president of the United States. So.
And and they try to paint him as a radical, right? When he first came in,
right.
I mean, am I right?
They were trying to get Clinton as the president back then too, in 2008.
And you could tell they promised her, man. They were like, "Look, man, when you just let Obama get in there, dude, we got you next time. I promise you, after Obama's done,
we got you next time.
We got you next.
It just so happened that next
Pinky
time
swear.
happened to be the time when no one wanted establishment. And then you're giving the most establishment of
candidate you could
possibly we're gonna go the orange guy.
You could tell I can almost see look, we got you next time, Hill. We got you. I mean, it's just it's going to be undeniable by the time you come up. You just
unfortunately, I don't think our country's ready for a female president yet, and probably won't be for another 30 years.
Yeah, but maybe it's just the social media sphere that's out there. But I see on social media all the time these Trump supporters well, Obama got to do this, so we're going to go ahead and let Trump do this now. Now it's our turn. It's our turn now, and it's like, what are you talking? Our turn? What does that even? What does that mean?
Do you see that? Because I've got a lot of Trump supporters on mine, and I've never heard.
I see that. But this is me going to certain pages like Breitbart. What is it? IJS or IJ, the Independent Journal, something. These conservative pages and going through some of the comments and stuff like that.
So if you look at those, and this goes back to the straw man, ironically, you'll find some of those extreme things that are easy to pick apart are actually liberals writing things in a conservative
Well, that is true
voice.
too. But that is true too. But at the same time,
so if you actually went to Breitbart, I'd say that you're probably right that they said that. But I actually keep Breitbart on my news feed source because I like MSNBC and Breitbart just to see what the real wackos kind of say.
Yeah, sure. There's
and
trolls.
they're not as far off as you might think.
There's trolls from both sides of the spectrum,
Absolutely.
on both sides of these platforms entering there. But no, I think I've seen it enough to where I think that there's just a certain group of Trump supporters and conservatives out there that it's just strictly partisan politics to them, and it's just like it's my turn to be an asshole because I thought you were being an asshole. Some metaphorical.
Everyone's just playing for their team.
There are some people that have just divided and said, "I'm a Republican. I'm always going to vote Republican." I mean, I try to avoid that. I've certainly voted, for Obama and stuff like that, though I switched to Romney in 2012. But
I wonder what Romney's thinking right now, right?
Well, he was promised too.
Trump got him though.
He ran 3 times.
Yeah.
Trump definitely got him with the whole Secretary of State.
He got him so good with that
he
too.
Got him with that.
Oh man.
See them eating together, I was like, dude, there's no way this dude's picking you. After all this shit you talked about him.
He ain't
Donald
pick
Trump
you,
doesn't
though.
forget. Yeah, like
he
anything.
doesn't. Exactly. He hasn't said a damn thing though. I wonder if Romney's going to try to come back.
Well,
He's
be
ran
hard,
3
though.
times. He has gone on record as saying under no circumstances.
No, he's done.
He's just like Clinton has said.
They're
done.
that 47%
There's that bad
is
taste
gonna
in the
be
mouth.
Yeah.
He will forever be a very powerful and actually surprisingly good senator. So he's one of the few moderates left in the party.
I mean, if you run the 47%, they will remember that.
Oh yeah, the 47%.
47%, man.
That will keep coming. That'll come.
Binder's a woman. Remember that was a big thing.
I remember the Binder's
a woman. He has Binder's a woman. He tied his dog to the top of a car and drove across the country. This criminal.
You guys think Trump will get impeached?
No, I think he's going to be president again in 2020.
I don't know if he's going to be president.
I think there's almost 0% chance he's not president.
How do you think this whole Mueller thing will end up going?
Mueller thing?
Not one person who has gone against him that's in his cabinet has come out well. So the fact that Mueller went against him, Mueller's going to end up losing here, and he will end up getting fired out of the administration. And just like
Mueller, the special investigator.
Oh, the special investigator
for the Trump and the Russia connection thing.
They're going to pass it off as Russia was working on their own. Trump actually has the right to pardon himself, but I don't think anything. I think that they've had enough time. At this point, they're no longer investigating Trump per se nearly as much as seeing what Russia's been doing. Because Russia's clearly been doing stuff, and we've talked about this. They've been doing stuff long before the days where they were buying social media.
I think they're going to get one. They're going to make an example. They're going to go ahead and get one guy.
But if they get one, that could be because Manafort apparently. If they get him, all the stuff he must know, or Flynn, or But I just have a thing like I have a lot of liberal friends, and I'm just like. I just have to be like, dude, I think you should maybe calm down because your expectations
is too high.
Just temper your expectations.
I don't think anything's going to come out. We're going to find it, and we're going to get new laws on the book, which Google and Facebook and all of them are already going into the self-policing thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's going to be the end results. Is there's going to be laws that support that you have to self-police, and we may end up into the unfortunate thing where the government's allowed to access a lot more information a lot easier, so it might go down a bad slippery slope. Right?
Yeah. And Trump will be president again.
I'm with you.
If Trump ran today, he would win.
If Trump wins in 2020, he'll win.
Well, I would say the only way Trump would, to me, I think right now would win in 2020 is just that there's no other compelling option on the other side. It's not anything to do with his policies.
That's a big part of it.
Not anything to do with even his base per se. I think it's just that there's no compelling option on the other side of the politics out there for people to be motivated to come out.
Democrat, right?
Yeah,
there isn't.
There's no Democrat that's going to come across.
That's the big problem. It's like, it's just that I see an unmotivated base. I don't see people coming out in droves saying, you know what, I think we need more Trump. I see people sitting at home and just saying, I give up.
Complaining.
Complaining.
Trump's base will vote. The base of the other guys will just sit.
We'll just think a lot and
think a lot and complain. But I think the option years is coming midterms. Really, I think is going to go ahead and decide for me to whether if Trump has a good odds of even wanting to come back in 2020. No. I think that if the Democrats pick up enough Senate seats, I think then that's.
But the party gerrymandering's at an all-time high. So I listened to something about.
Well, they're trying to crack that right now at the Supreme Court case, right?
They are, but good luck with 5 conservative judges in the Republican Party telling them not to crack that.
Well, 4. What's his name? Roberts. He's.
You've got 1 moderate Republican.
Yeah.
4. Is that Kennedy or Roberts? Is the one that I want to say that's Ken.
I think Kennedy, the John Kennedy.
I don't honestly remember anybody's name.
Yeah. What's his name? We're talking about the same guy, though. I'm pretty sure.
So we've got 1 moderate and 4. The point is that they're not going to stop the party's gerrymandering, and we've already got 1 decision that puts at least punted the ball. But could be interpreted to mean that it's already been decided that gerrymandering was legal. And they've got a map room where they literally just redraw everything. So most places, and especially in 2018, where very few at-risk Republican seats are open, where you're more likely to be attacked by your own party. And that's the reason they have to support the NRA. If your NRA grade goes down, you might lose your seat to somebody in the party.
John Roberts.
Yeah, Robert.
I think that I don't know what's going to happen with that case. John Roberts.
And he
surprised me.
He's thinking of retiring.
He's thinking of he may retire and drop it. Maybe he'll go ahead and have a moment of conscience, or not. But
well, it's not a matter of conscience. So what they're looking for in the case, which they weren't able to provide in 2004, was what is the mathematical metric for determining what is gerrymandering, and they couldn't decide it in 2004, so they punted it till now. Well, now we have a precedent for voting it to be legal. So in order to really challenge that, you have to have compelling evidence on enough has changed with your information in the case. And that's where I don't know. The fact that I haven't seen any mathematical claims on what you're going to call gerrymandering makes me think that even the Democrats are going to have to vote that the standard stays until somebody is able to formulate out this is what we're going to define as the illegal gerrymandering.
I think they want to use the Wisconsin incident as a model of this is what can happen.
The most extreme, but that it's easy to say this can't happen. The question is mathing out what can happen.
Yeah, and but I don't think that I'm not sure that at the very least I don't think the Supreme Court will go ahead and put a lid on this and make a definitive decision. Maybe they'll go ahead and kick the can down the road again, or say that or drop it. But I don't think that I don't think that would be prudent. But
I think kick the can's going to happen again too. I think they're going to be come back with a case that actually has math involved, and we'll talk to you.
And but I think that there could be a chance that the Senate maybe goes to the left. The House is freaking lost, man. I don't think that's going to come around for until maybe another census period after. Who knows?
It could go, but it'd be 2020 or 2022. Yeah. Right now, the Senate's actually in more danger of losing more Democratic seats than if Democrats gain, because it's simple. The math of more Democrats are running for re-election than Republicans, and most of the Republicans are in what you would consider Republican-y solid seats, which couldn't be challenged by anybody. In many cases, they're not being challenged by anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't know.
It's pretty much bleak if you're a Democrat or liberal for the next several years. Yeah, at least.
You've got
generally.
I think the House, inevitably in every presidential election, there's one time where they lose control of the House and or Senate, in Obama, it was his midterm election. Because of the way that the math works, I don't think it's going to happen now. 2020, 2022, Democrats may take back over and get one majority, but it doesn't matter. Republicans aren't passing anything right now. They're not even really trying. They're like, let's pretend like we're doing stuff. Well, we're really not.
We're looking into it.
It's too much gridlock.
Transparent thing. We're looking into it.
We're trying to get it. We'll get around to it. We'll get back to you on that.
And from that perspective, it doesn't matter if you have Democrats or Republicans stopping the legislation. They're just stopping it.
Well, I think that's about it, guys. It is 9:30. That was a good conversation. Thank you guys once again. And goodbye, people out there. We'll see you next time. Bye. Adios. And there you have it, folks. Another podcast down, episode 5. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed actually being there. And per usual, if you find yourself in the Atlanta area on a Tuesday or north of Atlanta and you want to go ahead and come on by, be sure to go to the Current Issues Discussion Group, Meetup Group. Go ahead and reserve your slot. You can sit down and have a conversation with us. We can get your unique perspective from your corner of the world on all types of issues. And we will be bringing this podcast to other places too. I look to go ahead and connect with some people around the world via the mysterious and magical internet. So look out for that too. We'll be getting perspectives from people overseas and people around the United States of America. All right. So I'm going to keep this outro nice and short. I know I talked to you guys' ear off in the beginning, but I had to go ahead and get that Hobson thing out, man. If you haven't seen that video, please go ahead and watch that and have a discussion with your friends and record it and come up with your own podcast. You know what I'm saying? All right, folks. Until next time, see you later.